Welcome to Byte-Sized Tech, where we blend casual conversations with insightful discussions on the latest in technology and gadgets. We've got a lot to unpack for you today, diving into Apple's newest releases and some pretty interesting shifts across their whole ecosystem.
Yeah, it feels like Apple's been absolutely relentless recently. A constant wave of announcements. We're looking at, big updates to the Apple Watch. There's a totally new iPhone model, and then this whole suite of software changes. It's honestly a lot to take in. But that's why we're here, right? To help you cut through the noise.
Exactly. We'll be breaking down how these new devices stack up against each other. And we'll look at some surprising advancements in health tech. Definitely want to touch on the practical side, like repair costs, and even explore some, let's say, strategic moves happening behind the scenes with Apple software and AI teams.
Yep.
Think of this as your essential guide. We want you to understand what really matters in all these updates so you don't feel totally overwhelmed. Let's jump right in. Okay, let's kick things off with the Apple Watch Ultra 3. Now, you might think, okay, yearly upgrade, maybe just small tweaks, but this one seems to bring some particularly interesting enhancements compared to the Ultra 2.
Yeah, what's really notable about the Ultra 3 is definitely the display. And maybe the message Apple's sending with it. We're seeing a huge leap in brightness from 3,000 nits up to a massive 4,000 nits.
4,000?
Right. And the bezel is smaller, too, about 24% reduction, so the screen feels larger, more vibrant. Battery life also gets a decent bump, 42 hours with the always-on display. That's up from 36 on the Ultra 2.
Okay, 6 hours more.
Plus, it's got the new S10 processor inside and better 5G connectivity. It's all meant to be more efficient.
So brighter screen, more stamina. Sounds good, definitely appealing. But, for those of us who already have an Ultra 2, does this 4,000 nit screen and extra battery make it a must-buy upgrade?
Yeah.
Or is Apple maybe aiming somewhere else with this?
That's a great question. I think that jump to 4,000 nits isn't just about making it easier to see on a sunny day, although it helps. It feels like Apple's staking a claim in environments where, frankly, most consumer devices just struggle.
Like really extreme conditions.
Exactly. Think mountaineering, deep-sea diving, maybe desert expeditions under intense sun. It sort of blurs the line between a high-end smartwatch and, dedicated expedition gear. Look, the Ultra 2 is still a fantastic watch.
Yeah.
Seriously capable, especially if you can find it at a discount now. They share a lot, right? 100-meter water resistance, that programmable action button.
Mm-hmm.
But the Ultra 3 adds two big safety features for the really serious adventures. You've got satellite-based emergency messaging now for when you're truly off-grid.
Okay, that's huge.
And a louder emergency siren, 86 decibels. These are critical if you often find yourself far away from any cell signal.
That makes a lot more sense. It's less about just a minor spec bump for everyday use and more about pushing the limits for a specific, pretty demanding user. And speaking of pushing boundaries, there's massive news on the health front. This affects not just the new watches, but some older ones too. FDA clearance for hypertension alerts.
This is genuinely a game changer because, hypertension, high blood pressure, it often has no symptoms. People just don't know they have it.
Right.
And what's really crucial to understand here is this isn't like strapping a blood pressure cuff to your wrist. It's smarter than that. The watch uses the optical heart sensor it already has, but it analyzes how your blood vessels respond to heartbeats over a 30-day period.
A whole month.
Yeah, it learns your personal baseline, your patterns, and then if it detects consistent signs that suggest chronic high blood pressure, it'll notify you. Apple put a ton of research into this, apparently. Used machine learning trained on data from studies with over 100,000 people.
Yeah.
That's a serious investment.
The potential for catching it early is just incredible. But
Yeah.
I remember some worries in the past with health wearables, about maybe causing anxiety, like over-alerting people about things that aren't actually diagnosed problems. How does Apple kind of walk that line between this amazing potential impact and, well, avoiding false alarms?
That's a really valid point. It's always a tightrope walk with health tech. Apple seems very careful here to position this as an alert system. It's meant to prompt you to talk to your doctor, not diagnose you itself.
Okay.
And that 30-day baseline period is super important. It helps filter out, just temporary spikes in blood pressure. Getting FDA clearance also means they had to meet pretty strict standards for accuracy and clinical usefulness, hopefully minimizing those false positives. The goal really seems to be empowering people with information that could lead to getting help sooner, bridging that gap between a subtle change your body is showing and actually going to the doctor.
And the really cool part is you don't need the absolute latest, most expensive watch to get this feature right.
Exactly. It's rolling out really soon, September 15th, with watchOS 26. It'll be on Apple Watch Series 9 and newer, and the Apple Watch Ultra 2 and newer, and it's launching in over 150 countries. Apple actually expects it to notify over 1 million people with undiagnosed hypertension just in the first year.
Wow, 1 million people. That's a massive potential impact on public health. Okay, let's move from your wrist to your pocket. The iPhone 17 lineup just unveiled, and there's a new kid on the block, the iPhone Air. It's impossibly thin, which is definitely eye-catching, but it also raises some interesting questions, I think, about design choices and maybe what you give up.
The iPhone Air is definitely a bold design statement, no question. It measures just 5.64 millimeters at its thinnest point. I mean, that's really pushing the limits of how thin a smartphone can be.
Super thin.
But yeah, this intense focus on thinness, it has real implications, especially for battery life. Apple's estimating about 27 hours of video playback for the iPhone Air, which sounds okay. But compare that. 30 hours for the standard iPhone 17, 33 for the 17 Pro, and a pretty hefty 39 hours for the Pro Max.
Okay, so a noticeable difference, especially compared to the Pro Max.
Definitely.
So you get this super sleek, almost futuristic design with the Air, but you might be trading off, getting through a really heavy day on a single charge. It almost feels like this extreme thinness isn't just about looks. Maybe it's Apple signaling where they want to go next.
I think you hit on something really important there. The thin design isn't just for show, it's probably a test bed. Think about this. The iPhone Air has a 3D printed USB-C port made of titanium.
Get out. Really?
Yeah, it's apparently 33% smaller and also stronger. Why do that?
Yep.
Maybe Apple's experimenting with how to overcome the physical limits for, say, truly seamless foldable iPhones down the line.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe even moving towards portless designs eventually. That could totally redefine charging and data transfer in, the next 3 to 5 years. They've also been looking into silicon carbon battery tech, which could give, a 15% boost in energy density. Another piece of the puzzle for keeping battery life decent in thinner phones.
That's fascinating. A glimpse into their longer game. Yeah. But okay, speaking of batteries right now, the iPhone Air has a very specific MagSafe battery pack accessory. What's the deal there?
Right. This is where that commitment to thinness gets interesting from a practical standpoint. This new MagSafe battery, it's only designed for the iPhone Air.
Seriously? Just the Air?
Yeah. It's actually too tall to properly line up and attach via MagSafe to any other iPhone 17 model, even the huge Pro Max.
That seems odd.
It does. It can charge, smaller things like AirPods via its USB-C port, but the battery itself is only 3,149 milliamp. That's not even enough to fully recharge a standard iPhone 17, and it costs $99.
$99 for a pack that only fits one specific phone and can't even fully charge it?
Pretty much. It feels like they prioritized matching the Air's design aesthetic over making something universally useful, which, might be a deal breaker if you want one battery pack for multiple devices.
Yeah, definitely something to consider. Okay, so with these new, super sleek, maybe slightly more fragile feeling devices, accidents are always a worry, especially when designs get thinner. So let's talk practicalities. What are the repair costs looking like for this new iPhone 17 family? Are we going to need deep pockets if something goes wrong?
Let's break down the potential damage to your wallet. Out of warranty battery replacements. For the Air, the Pro, and Pro Max, it's $119. The regular iPhone 17 is slightly less, $99.
Okay, not terrible for a battery.
But cracked screens, that's where it jumps. Starts at $329, and it can climb up to $379 if you crack the screen on the Pro Max.
Ouch.
Damage to the rear camera, you're looking at somewhere between $169 and $249. And then there's what Apple calls other damage, basically. Anything more serious, that could set you back as much as $799.
$799, yikes. Okay, those numbers definitely make you think twice. So what does this really mean for someone thinking about getting a new iPhone, especially with these potentially very high repair bills?
Well, it really brings up that important question. Is Apple Care Plus worth the extra money?
Right.
And honestly, for a lot of people, absolutely yes. If you know you're a bit clumsy or if you just really prefer not using a case, Apple Care Plus drastically cuts down those risks. It covers repairs for way less. Like a cracked screen fix is just $29.
$29 versus over $300, yeah.
A new battery replacement is $0 if it degrades. And they even have coverage for theft or loss now for a $149 deductible. All that costs, what, $11.99 or $13.99 a month, depending on the phone model? It can save you a ton of money in the long run. Gives you peace of mind, too.
Since we just talked about those scary repair costs, let's quickly touch on protecting your shiny new investment. A good case seems almost essential these days, doesn't it? What should people think about when picking protection for these new iPhones?
It's totally about balancing how much protection you need with your own personal style, right? Especially with these new, thinner designs, maybe feeling a bit more delicate. One interesting trend is the push towards more sustainable materials. We're seeing really durable MagSafe cases made from things like cactus leather now.
Cactus leather.
Yeah, but at the same time, the tech for drop protection keeps getting better. Some brands offer like military-grade drop resistance, but the case still feels pretty slim. There's really something for everyone. Minimalist wallet cases, super rugged waterproof ones for adventure types, even like fashion cases that look like little puffer coats, or glittery ones, you name it. It's just about finding that sweet spot between looking good and actually surviving a drop.
Absolutely. Finding the right fit for your lifestyle
Yeah.
and, yeah, maybe your clumsiness level.
Okay.
Definitely a win for avoiding those repair bills. Okay, moving beyond the hardware. Apple's also dropping a whole bunch of software updates next week. It's like a total digital makeover across the board.
Indeed. September 15th is the big day. We're getting watchOS 26, iPadOS 26, macOS Tahoe, which is also version 26.
Okay, they're unifying the numbers.
Exactly. tvOS 26 and visionOS 26 too. This jump to version 26 everywhere, that feels like a pretty significant strategic move. It signals even tighter integration, maybe a more shared core architecture across the entire Apple ecosystem. And a big visual theme you'll see in a lot of these is this new liquid glass design language.
Liquid glass. It sounds fluid. What does that actually look like for the user?
Yeah, imagine interface elements that seem to sort of float. They have subtle transparency, dynamic lighting effects. It almost blurs the line between the physical screen and the digital stuff on it, makes the whole interface feel more immersive, less flat, gives it a sense of depth.
Interesting.
Beyond the looks, iPadOS is finally getting a true Windows feature. You can run apps in resizable windowed forms. That's huge for pro-level multitasking on iPad.
Finally.
Right. And just for fun, tvOS update will let you use your iPhone as a real-time microphone for karaoke night.
Huh. Karaoke night just got a serious tech upgrade. So yeah, it's not just about the shiny new toys, but actually making the devices you already have better, more capable.
Oh, and speaking of enhancing existing stuff, good news for anyone with Powerbeats Pro 2 earbuds. iOS 26 will apparently bring real-time heart rate monitoring directly into the Apple Fitness app for like 50 different workout types, just like the new AirPods Pro 3 feature.
That's right. Bringing parity there.
Okay, now let's pivot to something maybe a bit less shiny, something more strategic. There's been some news recently about Apple and its AI strategy that's raising a few eyebrows.
Yeah, what's a bit concerning actually is a recent report about Robbie Walker. He's a senior director on Apple's AI team, used to lead Siri, and he's reportedly leaving the company next month.
Okay.
And this comes after other high-level AI people left Apple earlier this year, heading to places like Meta. That sounds like a significant talent drain. Especially in AI, which is just such a critical field right now, moving so fast.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't paint the most positive picture for what's happening inside Apple's AI development, does it? What are the sort of deeper implications of losing top leadership in an area that's so key to the future?
Well, if you connect the dots, this talent exodus probably isn't just about competitors offering more money, though that might be part of it. It raises a really critical question, I think, about Apple's internal culture and maybe its speed when it comes to AI development.
How so?
Apple's famous for its walled garden approach, right? Strict secrecy. Historically, that's been a strength. But in the AI world, progress often comes from open collaboration, publishing research, iterating really quickly in public.
Right, a very different model.
Exactly. So is Apple's traditional way of doing things now actually making it harder to attract and keep top AI talent? People who maybe thrive in a more open, faster-moving environment. We saw Apple announce Apple Intelligence, but let's be honest, it feels like it's lagging behind competitors like Google. Their Gemini Live chatbot has been out and active for a while now, and Apple's big AI-powered Siri upgrade, that got delayed until next year.
Yeah, I remember that.
So this could be more than just a temporary setback. It could represent a fundamental challenge to their dominance in the future, especially as AI gets woven into everything we do on our devices.
So it's interesting. As Apple is pushing the boundaries in hardware design, like with the iPhone Air and in health tech, are they maybe revealing some vulnerabilities elsewhere, particularly in this crucial AI race? It definitely leaves you wondering, is Apple playing some long game here that we just can't see yet? Or are they actually starting to lose ground in areas that are going to define the next decade of tech? Something to mull over. And that wraps up our bite-sized tech look at Apple's latest From smarter watches, keeping an eye on your health, to new iPhones pushing design boundaries, and yeah, even a few potential bumps in the road in the AI world, there's certainly a lot to consider.
Indeed. It's clear that while innovation is definitely moving fast, really understanding the details, the nuances of each upgrade, each update is key to making smart choices about the tech you use. Which of these new gadgets or updates caught your eye the most?
So what stands out to you from today's Bite-Sized Tech? Something to think about until next time. Thanks for tuning into Bite-Sized Tech. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more fun tech discussions.